Right, sit up, shut up and listen. This is a guide to CB, right? Now, you need a guide because it's a labyrinth, I can tell you. Now, it's not a little teach yourself, repeat after me number. It's a get a load of this, understand it, and be prepared to answer questions later. Now, you're going to be hearing all sorts of things, including music. Yes, you're going to hear what CB's for. You're going to hear people using it, how it started in America, how it started here, and you're also going to have a guide to this guide. Now, somebody who knows a lot more about it than I do, and he's terribly familiar. You'll know his name immediately I say it. He's so well known, I hardly need to introduce him, and it's Mr. Dave Lee Travis.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the story of Citizens Band Radio. So, you want to know about Citizens Band Radio? Well, this tape, believe me, will tell you all you really need to know in the straightest way possible. We're not going to confuse you with talk like rubber ducks in convoy.
Well, hi there, good buddy. Got a goon spot with a bunch of bushes. Wretched joining the monster lane, so take it into slack now. Don't feed the bears, down and gone.
And we're not going to use too much technical jargon.
Turn the switch to cal, calibrate, go on to transmit, and adjust the sensitivity for full-scale deflection.
Well, that'll need a degree in microtechnology to understand it. But CB is easy, fun, and useful. We're going to hear the story of CB radio here and abroad from an acknowledged expert on the subject, Richard Nichols, the editor of Breaker magazine. Tell me, Richard, what do you know about Citizens Band Radio?
Oh, a great deal.
Well, just as I said, an expert. More from him in a moment. And if you're confused about what equipment you need to start up, then Richard Hudson Evans is on the other side of this tape, discovering what equipment is available, how much it costs, how you set it all up, and coming up with sensible answers to idiot questions like...
Now, where do you suggest I put my antenna?
The answer to that lies on the other side. Meanwhile, back here on this side... OK, let's start with a straightforward definition of what Legal Citizens Band is. Then we'll all know what we're talking about. For this, I call upon a straightforward expert, Richard Nichols.
CB's very simple. It's just a two-way radio which you can put in your car, in your caravan, on your ski boat, anywhere you like. And with it, you can then speak to as many people who are similarly equipped and are within range about anything you like, the weather, the cricket results, whatever.
What I'd like to know, Richard, is people who are using CB, what do you reckon they'll be using them for most of all?
They're going to use it for exchanging things like traffic information. If you're stuck in a traffic jam on the motorway and somebody comes on the wireless and says there is a traffic jam on the M1, it's too late because you already know. With CB, you'll know before you hear it on your radio. If there's an accident, fog, bad weather, anything like that, you'll hear it broadcast. Or if you just want to know what the traffic's like off the motor, if you're coming up to Birmingham, you can call up and say, OK, what's the traffic like in the city centre? Shall I go through it or round it? And someone will tell you. Yeah. Or if you don't know Birmingham, you can call up and say, OK, I want the station in the city centre. And some kind soul will tell you. As you're driving, they'll say, right, you're at a set of traffic lights. Turn left, there's a big shop on the corner, now turn right there. Go down until you see the bakers and turn right, and you'll be there.
Well, it's a known fact that if you ask anyone what they associate with CB, they're going to mention a little place that's just west of Watford Gap. It's called America, because in America, on the highways and byways, there are these big, bold, truck-driving men with bars of chocolate lying at their side as they travel on their weary way, talking to each other, hurling abuse and doing all sorts of things. It may be a bit of an old cliche, I think, about America and the start of CB, but it does lead me into the question, Richard, which is burning. How did it in fact start in America?
CB in America goes right back to 1948, when they introduced what they called then General Mobile Radio Service, which was VHF. It used valve sets, and it imitated bird calls rather better than it transmitted the human voice. It popped and whistled and crackled. Nobody really liked it very much, and it never really caught on. But the transistor changed all that because it enabled people to make a set which could stand up to the battering in a car and still produce an acceptable signal. So if you like, round about 1958, when Class D Citizens Band came out, which is what we now know as CB, and the transistor was incorporated into it, it began to catch on. But it was really only the truckers then, because it was, if you like, an expensive luxury. And they stuck with it for a long time until the oil crisis. You can remember petrol rationing or the threat of it over here.
Yes, indeed.
Americans discovered OPEC and panic in the same moment in about 1973. The truckers needed their fuel to stay on the road. They needed it for their bread and butter. That's how they earned their money, and they used their radios to tell each other where they could get fuel. And at the same time, the federal government introduced the double nickel, the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And the big rigs can do a lot more than 55 miles an hour, but it takes them a while to get there, so they don't want to keep slowing down unless they've got to. They don't want to hold 55, they need to get from place to place. So they used it also to tell each other where the speed traps were. And Joe Public in America suddenly thought, aha, this is a way that I can avoid the gun battles at petrol stations, because they were killing each other. I can get a CB in my car and I can listen in and I can find out where the fuel is and I can zip round there. And so instead of going to the station that washes your windows best, you now go to the one that's got the gas. And that's really when it picked up and took off in the States, simply because people needed petrol. Obviously, having got it and used it for that purpose, it became a culture, it became something nice to have. And it started the biggest consumer boom in America since colour television. And there were Far Eastern, nimble, inscrutable Orientals turning out CB rigs at the rate of 10 million a year just to fuel the American market.
They got CB. They liked CB. They kept CB. Well, if having a CB avoided getting shot up at the gas station, it's hardly remarkable that CB caught on so quickly. But what amazes me is that once the crisis was over, CB continued to boom. Now, what was all that about?
What actually happened is that the American government, the federal government, launched a full-scale inquiry into CB after the oil crisis to find out whether it was a good thing and whether they were in favour of it. And they discovered that CB was of great value to the community, and it became federal policy to encourage the use of CB radio as an aid to road safety. And with that kind of backing and that kind of respectability, a lot of governments have had to face up to the fact that CB is quite important to the motorist. I don't know if you remember, but maybe 5 years ago everybody was talking about these little roadside transmitters that were going to broadcast traffic information on a tape loop. Yeah? As you drove past, it would cut into your car radio and tell you what the weather was like 10 yards up the road. But the Americans found that motorists were unwilling to pay for something in their car which only had a safety value, but they were quite happy to buy a CB radio which had all kinds of uses and helped them on the road. So the federal government said, OK, we're in favour of CB, we will promote it actively, and they have done for years.
Well, of course, it's a fact that CB has spread worldwide as more and more governments have realised that the motorists have been pretty adamant about this equipment, that they want it, and there is a very good reason, apart from the personal side of it, that you want to say hello to your friend going to work in the morning. It actually has a viable use on the roads of controlling traffic. So, of course, the government's realised it and legalised it. But in Britain, things tend to have moved very, very slowly. I mean, it didn't exactly come in with a big bang, did it? It almost just leaked in.
CB first sort of percolated into this country in about, 1967, 68. In the form of little handheld radio sets, what you would call a walkie-talkie, which had one channel and a range of about 70 to 100 yards if the wind was blowing in the right direction. And they were sold in toy shops for kids to play war games and impersonate John Wayne. A small bunch of people got together and used them for their own pleasure, just strolling about London talking to each other. And they were forced off the air by prosecutions. The government decided that this was not a good thing. They introduced legislation in 1968 to prevent it and then ran them off the airwaves. But they were back again in the early 70s, and they were using Channel 14 by then on the early 23 channel rigs as their net channel. And they just grew and grew and grew and grew. And by 1978, the end of 78, there were an estimated 500 people in London, and only in London, using CB illegally. It started to spiral from there ever so fast. People had cottoned onto it, they could get it, they knew someone who knew someone's cousin who had an uncle that owned a pub and knew an airline pilot or whatever. And it was just big business all of a sudden. I think the collapse of the skateboard boom left an awful lot of people hanging about with nothing to sell, and they suddenly became instant CB experts and developed little closed down sweet shops with, you know, a few planks for a counter, and they knew everything there was to know about CB.
Draft specifications for the equipment and frequencies were issued by the government in April 1981 and finalised in June of that year. A blow for existing AM users was the new band of frequencies allocated on FM. The start was defined as the autumn of 1981. And finally, in early October, the announcement came. November the 2nd was to be CB Day. It has to be said that the pirates, call them what you will, the illegal users of the AM channel, or perhaps better is the pioneers of CB in this country, have had a lot to say against the FM frequency selected by the government. The government, in their specifications, for instance, have in fact limited the range of legal FM sets in comparison to the high-powered AM rigs fitted with burners as used by the pirates. So is there a good reason for this?
In terms of radio spectrum, Britain is a very overcrowded island. There's more bits of radio in the sky here than there are anywhere else in the world. So, yes, we need to control it a bit more carefully than it has been under the pirate network. And what we've got is a system which should, under ideal conditions and with a following wind, give you about 10 miles of range in open country. But anything like trees, hills, buildings will get in the way and cut that down.
So there you are, then you can get up to 10 miles, but is distance really that vital? Surely it's communicating with people that's so useful and enjoyable, isn't it?
It's wonderful to have people to talk to. You travel a lot.
Yes, I do.
And you must know what it's like when you're stuck in a car and all you've got is some goon on the wireless who is pestering you. In some places, radio reception's not that good anyway. You get fed up with the tapes you've got in your tape player. You want to talk to someone and have a laugh and be human with someone. And so you can pick up your microphone and you can be anybody. You can hear it on the air any time, just by switching the set on, and you'll hear people come up 1-4 for a wind-up. Yeah, they just want to hear a joke, you know, they want someone to annoy them. You know, it'd be 1-4 for a wind-up. Yeah, I've got a starting handle, how does that grab you?
Yeah.
And you get 1-4 for the deaf breaker, and you pick up your microphone and think, oh, wait a minute. No.
Actually, there is a fun aspect, obviously, to CB, and I think perhaps one thing that suddenly jumped into my mind whilst you were saying that, Richard, is that there are times when perhaps you are in a situation as a motorist where you're getting irate because you're in a traffic jam. Now, we do tend to shake our fists at each other in the streets of Great Britain. If somebody cuts you up or brakes hard where you think they shouldn't and you're too close behind them when you shouldn't be, there's always this frustration, this inbuilt frustration. Now, am I right in thinking that CB, if you've got somebody in front of you with a rig, suddenly you're the best of buddies by simply pressing the button?
Yeah. The Germans, they did a lot of research into this with their motoring psychologists, and they found that CB was probably a very good thing because what happens is people's personalities tend to change a bit when they get into a car, you know. Putting on your indicator to change lanes, a bit like throwing down the gauntlet to everybody else on the road. You try and stop me. But having a CB suddenly makes all those other cars people instead of machines. They're all little people in their boxes that you can talk to, and it does change your attitude to other drivers. And okay, you're a bit more likely to say, yeah, you go first, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Because I know you're probably the Batman or something.
We have gone down to our local shop. We have purchased the correct length antenna. We've got the rig. It's plonked in, and for a first magic moment, a little light appears, whether it be 16 red ones or one little yellow one showing your little needle to say how much power you're pushing out. But you know that this is the moment of no return. At some point, you're going to have to press the button and talk. Now, is it necessary to have a handle stroke name on the air?
Well, it's a convention to have such a thing. I think there are two reasons for that. One, it's a lot of laughs. You can work out all kinds of... I mean, if you're trying to choose a handle, then you could ask your friends to suggest one for you. And believe me, they will all have one for you that you probably won't want to use. But you can use your CB handle to illustrate your job,
Right.
the kind of person you are, the kind of car you drive, your favourite hobby, anything that appeals to you. You can use a handle for a little bit of a laugh there. And having a handle is a good way of concealing your identity and getting around the mic fright a bit. Because it's not quite the same as saying, all right, I'm Richard or I'm Dave. And they say, oh, I know you, you're the loony that lives at the end of the road. You can't drive either. So, yeah, handle, I think most people will have one. Apart from anything else, it's just going to make them laugh.
Richard, I have to ask you, don't I? Why? I wish you could look into your little tape deck gang and see his face now, because I'm going to ask him what his handle is. What is it?
Well, it is tied to my job with Custom Car. We have a cartoon character who is a known toad and loony, Super CC, and it's therefore quite obvious that on the air I am Super CC.
But you could also be anything else you want at any time, couldn't you?
I could adopt any other handle, and then people wouldn't know who I was. I mean, if I'm feeling I want to be alone,
It's Greta.
yeah, I can choose any name I like.
OK, so you've got your handle, and I've got mine, but I'm not going through all that. I'll let you wait and find out who I am. The next step, obviously, is to get used to the equipment. And I suppose a question that's raised in a lot of your minds out there is, how complicated is it, and how long will it take to understand it?
It is black box technology. If you can operate a transistor radio or a TV, then you can work a CB. All you've got to do is switch it on, which is easy enough, and press the button and speak. And that's all there is to it. There are only about 3 things you need to know, and anybody with half a brain can manage it, which
You
in
have,
some
after
cases,
all.
yeah, in some cases appears to be the prime qualification. But the technology becomes second nature so quickly. It's not true. You just switch it on and it works. That's all there is to it.
Well, so much for the equipment, but what about you? Are you going to work? There is, I have to say, one thing which may well hold you up. I know I've suffered it in my time as well, in a totally different context, of course. There you are with the rig at the ready. It's all lit up. You've got your microphone in your hand, and all of a sudden, blank. You freeze. A sudden, unexpected attack of the dreaded microphone shyness. There are people out there, total strangers probably, just waiting to pounce on your first words. Richard, what is the best way to cope with that situation?
The best thing to do is sit and listen to it. Pretend for a couple of days that it hasn't got a microphone. Just switch it on and listen.
OK, then, let's Hear the earwaves. I think that's as good a phrase as any. Let's listen to a typical bit of breaker talk. But first, I do have to point out that you probably won't understand it. Not so much the jargon, but the actual sound of it. Remember, for instance, how you had to adjust your ears to decipher astronauts talking from space, like on the moon landings, for example. I know a lot of people who sat up, had sleepless nights watching them walking about on the moon, listening to the jargon, and eventually they did get to understand it. You will have to tune your ears, and then it's just a case of getting used to it. Anyway, these breakers are a lot closer to us than the moon. They are, in fact, in darkest, deepest Essex.
What's your handles, by the way?
Yeah, what's they got a wing like you?
Sorry, got someone bleeding over you. I'm Condor Man in Wormley, yeah?
Yeah, what's they got a wing like you?
Yeah. Roger, yeah, what's your 20?
Nice 20, yeah?
Now, that's what's known as the breaking channel. That's where everybody comes up to make contact. As soon as you've done so, you both move off to another channel that's free. There, the chance of woozy interference interfering with the clarity is less.
You will soon work out the way that everybody deals with each other on the air, the formulas there are for opening and closing conversations and saying certain things.
Yeah, 1-4 for a copy. Yeah, Roger, you got termite. What's your handle?
Yeah, got kick about it. Do you want to pick a window?
You pick a window.
25.
Roger, see you there.
23.
Yeah, Roger.
What's your 20?
Yeah, in the Nazin 20. Where's yours?
Yeah, I'm in the Naze 20, just by the Big Dipper. What about in Naze in the U?
Well, you know the fairy lights?
Yeah, Rog.
Well, there's only one direction that you can go upwards from there, right? We're up in the clouds.
Yeah, you got any other breakers in your family?
Yeah, Roger, there was Woodworm, but she's moved away.
You anything to do with Death Watch Beetle?
Yeah, Roger, he's a seat cover.
Yeah, my friend says that he knows you.
I wonder if his friend works for Rent-A-Kill. Woodworm, termites, Deathwatch beetles, seat covers, up in the clouds and fairy lights. Come on, Richard, what's all that about?
The jargon, which starts off like being a kind of alien language, suddenly starts to make sense. And then you will feel, OK, I'm ready to talk. And in that case, it's probably best not to initiate a conversation, but wait for someone who is looking for a chat. And they'll come up on the air and say, breakers, any takers, whatever. And you can jump in and say, yes, I'm here. And they do understand the mic-shy beginners. And there is no doubt whatsoever that they will take the Jew something rotten. But they will be laughing and so will you, so it doesn't matter.
1 for the copy.
Yeah, come back to breaker for the copy. You got RD.
Yeah, okay, yeah, nice one. Yeah, you've got Condor Man here. Yeah, what's your 20 good, buddy?
20. Can you tell us? Not sure what that one is.
Yeah, your 20 is, where do you live, you know? Where do you live?
Oh, Roger. Okay, we're in Nazin at the moment. What's your 20?
Yeah, I'm in the old, Chestnut 20, yeah? Not a bad copy.
By the way, what I was wanting to ask you, I heard somebody say earlier something about a donut. What does that mean?
Okay, yeah, the old donut is, what it sounds like, you know, a roundabout, sort of used for the old directions, yeah?
Roger on that one. Oh, I see. Okay. Only I heard somebody ask them where they were, and they said their 20s by the donut near the traffic lights. And I thought, what the hell's he on about, Roger?
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, the old traffic lights are called the fairy lights, because they look like, sort of like Christmas lights, yeah?
Roger on that. Yeah, I've only had the rig a week, and haven't used it a lot, so you're about my 10th person, Roger.
Yeah, Roger on that one. Very nice too, yeah. Oh, well, how many pounds am I pushing on you?
What does pounds mean, by the way? Is that signal?
Yeah, that's the old signal strength coming into me, yeah?
How's it that end with me?
Yeah, you hear me wall-to-wall, treetops tall.
What does wall-to-wall mean?
Yeah, it sounds like, you know, the old modulation comes in and fills up the room.
Okay. Yeah, Condor Man, it's been nice talking to you. So, I suppose we'll say bye to you. Ta-da. What is it? What do you say?
Okay, good buddy. It's 10:10 and catch you again, yeah?
Okay, roger on that one. We'll say ciao for now then, and bye-bye.
Okay, 10:10, catch you again. We're down, we're gone, we're off. Woo!
You fall into that habit very easily, and in some cases against your will. I know, to begin with, I didn't really like it very much. It sounded strange. I've been used to strict radio procedure before that, and all this come back, come on, that's a 4, give me a 9. It suddenly sounded, who are these people? But you fall into it, just like that.
You listening to this tape, we want to make you feel that really there is no hard and fast rule to it, that it's obvious that after a period of time you will fall into some form of communication which is comfortable to yourself and others. The main fact is that if there is any jargon going on, it's usually just at the very beginning of the conversation to move to another channel, and then you can talk quite normally.
It's the sort of conversation you would have with a friend on the telephone.
Yeah.
But on the telephone you have to dial the number. On the CB you have to go through this little rigmarole to make the contact and find yourself a quiet channel. But yeah, I think the most important thing is that everybody else on the CB, everybody else out there has got one because they like it too, and because they want to talk to you. So they're not actually going to rubbish you if you don't know the Americanisms or if you can't be bothered to use them. They want to meet you, that's why they're there.
Well, do you want to be there too? It's a very important question, and one I'm sure that you've answered already. In fact, before I got into CB, pick a window didn't have the same meaning at all for me. Now it means look for a spare channel to have a talk on. Then it was people used to be fed up with what I was saying and say, pick a window, you're leaving. Well, I am leaving for the moment anyway now, but if we've whetted your appetite, I hope that's what it's all about. This tape has been purely to let you know it's a lot simpler than it at first seems. Well, there is, of course, a technical aspect to CB, and indeed, flipping over your tape in a moment's time, you'll be able to find that beavering away on the other side of this tape is our man with all those searching questions. It's Richard Hudson Evans.
Right, thank you, Dave. Very interesting. Right, you lot. Now, I suppose you think you know all about CB. Well, you don't, and I know that because you haven't heard the other side yet, and for the inexperienced ones amongst you, side 2 is on the other side of this cassette.